So, welcome to the Arctic Indigenous Investment Series. So, this is a podcast that is focusing on the Indigenous economic story. We're talking with people who are involved in Indigenous business or who have been part of laying kind of the economic foundation for the Yukon. And so, I am very pleased to have Jani Djokic.
No, you still didn't learn.
Oh my God.
How many years has it been?
Djokic.
Djokic. Yeah.
Jani Djokic. The current CEO of Na-Cho Nyäk Development Corporation, which is the primary business arm of the First Nation of Na-Cho Nyäk. And we also have Katie Johnson, who's a proud Kluane First Nation citizen and currently the executive director of Reconnection Vision, as well as the director of Kluane Dana Shaw and president and CEO of Bella Elite Consulting. So,
hey, Blair. Hi, Yanni.
So welcome both of you to the podcast, and thank you so much for taking the time to just talk about your guys' journey in community economic development. And and I mean, this is just it's a broad conversation. We have no objective here. We have no script or nothing that we're really trying to achieve here. It's just, we want to talk to people like yourselves that have been involved and have done great work in the Yukon. And so, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. I'm excited to share, and also with our awesome Yanni and all her amazing work that she's doing. So yeah, I really appreciate the invite and the opportunity.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
As do I.
Yeah. Did you guys want to say anything before we start, or is there did I mess up anything on the introduction?
No.
Okay.
Just that it's awesome to share space with Katie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, it's been so long.
I think our paths have been doing this for like a decade.
Yeah, and I love that, especially the amazing work that you do, and for us to just share our story and our experiences, and also I feel like there's this opportunity for us to do some more work together, but also share our experiences and in the last 2 decades of working in the different sectors that we've been working in. So,
So let's start with Katie. We had a chance to talk briefly a couple weeks ago, or maybe 3-4 weeks ago, just about your journey, about starting with the Yukon First Nation Culture and Tourism Conference, and how the premier talked to you about the premier at the time, which was Pierce, right?
Yeah, that was back in, oh my gosh, 2017.
Yeah.
I was so young, in my 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was it like back then, and why did you start a conference or a festival that grew to become Adäka?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's crazy. I always tell people the work that I do is not so much a career, but a calling. And so when I came back from university, I just realized that there was little to no Indigenous content, especially when it came to art and culture and sharing of history. And so I had this opportunity to, it was actually Canada Winter Games. And it was the buzz in the town, and everyone was talking about how amazing, and there was going to be this many people in town, and there was, and that at that time it was Aboriginal, and in terms of how are they going to get involved, and so it was this opportunity to work with communities to showcase who they there is this opportunity for us to showcase our artists, our elders, our stories. And so we had our first ever cultural pavilion at that time, and it was the amazing hotspot of the games. And then from there, it was the 2010 Winter Olympics,
Right.
And so there was this opportunity to partner with the 4 host nations. There was this huge buzz nationally. And so we're actually working with Council of Yukon First Nations at the time. And so we knew that this was an opportunity for us to really leverage this event to showcase Yukon First Nations. So we managed to get the resources, the people, the energy, to bring, I think there was like 80 of us that went down to Vancouver. Wow. And so we had performing artists, we had visual artists in galleries. We also had youth that were a part of the opening ceremonies. And that's kind of where I feel like I think I told you this story, and it was the late Doris McLean, who was my guiding elder through all of this work, was like, wow, this is the opportunity where the box opens, you know, when we talk about the story of the sun and the stars and the moon, and it just opened. And I think as Indigenous people, we've just been so closed in. And so after the Olympics, it was just like this beautiful box opening for Yukon First Nations to shine and share their gifts to the world and like be a part of it. And then from there, we were like, well, we can't stop now. And so we were able to get the resources to host the first ever Adäka Cultural Festival, which was in 2011.
But it was under a previous name before Adäka.
Yeah,
right? 'Cause there's a story there too.
There is a story. So we knew that we had to find a place for us to like land, and so it was like the first ever Yukon First Nation like arts festival. And so we, Charlene Alexander and I, who's a co-founder of Adäka, we explored and we were able to land somewhere, and then that's when we discovered that this was a need in the Yukon, and that we needed to have a place for us to gather every year, to share, to celebrate, to connect and be together. And so the festival has grown in the last, since 2011. And we have artists from all over the world that come and celebrate. And what's great about this festival is Yukon First Nations are the center of the event. And we're so visible and we're so seen and heard, and we're able to share all the beautiful gifts. And then so many people nationally, internationally are like gravitated to that.
Yeah, I mean, it really was the culmination of the Yukon First Nation Culture and Tourism entity. I mean, it was the Yukon First Nation Tourism Association before, and you guys breathed life into it with this Adäka Festival. And just now, we're talking with some of the artists and culture performers, and a lot of Indigenous tourism businesses are saying it's because of Adäka, it's because of that platform that they have the exposure, that they have they have the ability to now market themselves internationally, and they see themselves represented in the world economy, which is so powerful.
So powerful. Visibility and ensuring that there's a safe space and a place for that to be shared.
Awesome. Let's get back to that in a second. So, Jani.
Oh, no.
When we first met, you were working at the Development Corp, but you were the COO, I think, at the time. And I just remember us talking about community economic development and what that means and how it should be done. And now fast forward to today, and you have such a powerful woman-forward entity. I mean, the philosophies that you've embodied are represented in the corporation and the work that you do. And it would be great if you could just talk a little bit about the Na-Cho Development Corporation and just how you are doing community economic development work and maintaining connections with all these things that are so fundamental to community empowerment.
Ooh, it's a loaded one. So NNDDC has in some ways had a turbulent past, right? It's just like every business. There were ups and there were downs, and NNDDC operates within the traditional territory of the First Nation of Na-Cho, which is being heavily impacted by the resource industry, both in terms of mining and exploration. And the last bust, I would say, really hurt us, right? And in large part by the DevCorps getting hurt in that cyclical, in the cyclical nature of that sector. Our community also hurt from it.
And are you specifically talking about the Eagle mine, or are you talking about a mining cycle?
No, mining cycle.
Okay.
Yeah, so just the boom bust cycle that comes with mining, right?
Sure.
And so we went through a downturn in the economy as a whole entire territory, as the Yukon, but just knowing that most of the resources that the Development Corporation had came from that sector, and we were playing such a key part in the community when we as the Dev Corps were hurting, quote unquote, because of that downturn. And you could see that the community was hurting because of it as well. And so it created a bit of this mentality shift in me of like Dev Corps as caregivers in a way, and what are the environments that we can create as those caregivers, and what are the things that make people feel safe and make people feel valued. So everything from like being clothed and being housed, being fed. And so those kind of really became the central focus of NNDDC as our, I don't want to say community development arm, but as economic development at the core and nation building at the core. And I don't know, I was just having a really hard time reconciling between, I would say, a separation between like the big for-profit opportunities that were presenting themselves, and then also the community development elements that were presenting themselves. And it felt like if we were focusing on one, then another was getting ignored. And then if we focused on this other one, then this other side was getting ignored. And so we were really, I don't know, I've spent the past few years trying to figure out what we like to call a reinvestment model at NNDDC to see how we could keep that economic development piece at its core. And it doesn't mean doing not-for-profit things. It doesn't mean doing small-scale business. But the ethos of what we did at the core of us as an organization is rooted in community and in the principles of economic development. And so we've kind of built, I'm going to say like the circular org chart. We kept drawing it out with your typical hierarchical structures that you see in a lot of Western business structures. And like it wasn't making sense. It kept feeling like, oh, okay, well, the community team was being relegated off to the side, or like you had this top dog. And I was like, none of this makes sense. So we ended up redrawing our org structure so that there's one central circle, and that circle is our community, right? And so everything we do at that economic development level, and then we have a ring around that, which is going to be kind of your support services, so to speak. So your HR, your admin, your finance. And then this outer ring, which is kind of the executive and this investment space. And our belief is that with that circularity, naturally that center piece will start to grow, which then pushes on the edges and the rest of the edges grow type thing. And really just focusing our effort into that central piece. So it isn't like that outer ring just grows exponentially and the centerpiece is being starved. So I think bringing that circularity into what we were doing completely kind of changed the like personality of the Dev Corps, so to speak. And then with that perspective of, women and the matriarchy and that caregiving role that we have, just naturally that just kept getting embedded into the work that we were doing. And I think it's really been the reason why we've been able to keep that circularity. And we all recognize we have a role to play in how we care for people. Yeah. And that business is a tool to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And kind of going back to Katie, you're also involved with your economic development on the trust, right? With Kluane Dana Shaw, right?
Correct. Yep. I've been on it for almost like 8 years now.
Right. And that also, it's very matriarchy dominant.
Very much.
Burwash, right? You're from Burwash.
Yep.
And do you connect with what Jani's saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're so, definitely. I mean, I think I just kind of go back to my upbringing. And just being raised in a small community and in the Kluane country. And we have really strong women from Kluane. And they all play different. I think it's called Kluane Mafia. I've heard that a few times. I'm like, I don't know about that, but we're definitely very committed in leadership in very many different sectors. And we were raised with really like a very strong community. We had very strong grandmas, aunties, and I think it all comes down to like values and like how, you know, attending harvest camps, going to GAs. Like I think it really shapes who we are as like leaders. And what's great about women in leadership is we all support one another. And so even though if we're working in different areas, we're always like supporting and reconnecting and sharing the work that we're doing. And I think it stems from like responsibility. And so my father was chief for many years for our nation. He was a negotiator. And my dad, it wasn't authoritative leadership. And it was really centered in the heart of the work that we do and how we care for our people. And so I think sort of my leadership has always been through my values and like how we can uplift our voices, uplift our people. And going back to what you were saying, like the women have really have had that opportunity to do that because it's instilled in how we carry ourselves in the community. And so, yeah, I think it's really great to see upcoming women doing this, like just opening the door and sharing that space for them to share their voice and be a part of the next generation of women leaders and for our children. So,
and when you speak of your community, has it always been so female led? It has, yeah.
Very
okay.
much. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we do have a lot of, it's like it's like such a combination. So we have like leaders in like language, we have many that are in politics, we have ones that are like really focused on education. And I think it's like, again, it's just kind of going back to how we're all raised and like how we're going to lead that work together. And it all kind of like comes together somehow. And kind of going back to the, like you said, like there's the center and then there's the circles in terms of the impact. So when I'm thinking of a project, that's my number one question is like, what kind of impact is it going to have on the community? Not just like one community, but like all communities. And I think my work has always been centered on like how to create spaces, how to elevate community voices, to be on like Yukon First Nation level rather than just like one nation. But what's amazing is my heart is with my nation. So I always have a home to come to. I always have the land to come to, and I'm always going to be connected to my community.
And Jani, you come from Serbia, right? Do you have a similar community cultural makeup that you see kind of here in the Yukon? Like how does that reflect?
Yes and no. I mean, Serbia is within Europe. So we do have the experience of a dispossession of a lot of our culture because of the occupation of the Ottoman Empire that came in. Then we had the Roman Empire. And then we had, I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff. And so there is this loss of identity in Serbia. But I think there's still this like core community value because of the experiences we have had as a very, I'm going to say war-torn region, like the Balkans in general. And so we've had to band together as a community. And so that was something where I think when I ended up in the Yukon, it felt very much like I was at home in that sense. And I had grown up in an urban center, and I was very disconnected from that community element, and something always felt off. And I was like, this isn't how the world operates, right? Like, I was taught that you learn knee to knee, which is a saying in Serbian, and it means that we sit knee to knee with the people that we love, and we share stories in that close encounter, and that's how we learn. And I didn't have that in an urban center. And so that's where I think we do have a lot of similarities, like culturally there with Serbia and here in the Yukon. But I don't know. We are so disconnected as a nation from what we traditionally did, culturally disconnected. So like that, I can't really speak to a lot of, just because it's something I didn't really grow up with, and kind of told it was like a bad term. We don't talk about it type thing. Yeah. And I grew up in a decade where being Serbian was a bad thing because, we were the perpetrators in the conflicts in the Balkans through the 90s. And so I, for a long time, completely denied my Serbianness, because I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with that, because we're quote unquote monsters. That's what I grew up seeing in the media here in Canada. And then, I know we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but like,
great.
Interestingly, it's actually been working with Na-Cho Nyäk done in particular, but also just Yukon First Nations more widely, that made me reconnect with my language and with my culture. And I was thinking about Joella, who's an who's an NND citizen, and I had been thinking about going to visit Serbia, and I was like, oh, my heart's just like calling to there. I need to go back, and I need to visit my grandma. And I couldn't seem to like disconnect from being on this hamster wheel and doing work and whatever. And I remember her saying, like, I'm gonna message you every single day to find out if you booked your ticket. And she honored her word. She messaged me every single day to say, are you gonna go see Granny? And yeah, my work here in the Yukon has just kind of like led me on this beautiful path back to my identity and my roots. And it's interesting to see a bit of that resurgence happening in the Balkans, and a younger generation really trying to reconnect with who we are and the sustainability we want for the region, and getting a lot of different pressures from outside economic forces, and just like kind of that resistance and uprising that's kind of happening in the Balkans right now is, I think, quite a beautiful thing to see. Yeah, I'm trying to stay true to what we know deep down is there within us. And it's just been a lot of outside forces and outside systems imposed on us that have taken that away, type thing.
So did you book your ticket?
Well, this was before, but yeah, I booked my ticket to
Okay,
see my
great.
granny. Yeah, no, it was beautiful. It was an absolute, yeah, it was an absolutely beautiful trip. Yeah, and I think more and more I see similarities, and I'm able to identify them through like seeing the work that so many amazing people around me are doing in relation to, reconnection with culture and resurgence of languages, and repairing familial relationships, and all this beautiful work that's going on that has led me on my own journey, and then able to bring that back into my work. So yeah, I no longer feel disconnected.
That's awesome. And then how do you stay connected, Katie? Do you culture camps? Do you go hunting? Do you do traditional activities?
Hunting.
Yeah.
Maybe. No. I thought it was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I mean, that's what's so amazing is like growing up on the land really, and like being among like the mountains and the lake, and had the opportunity to like go to potlatches and be with elders, and learn how to set gopher traps, and go hunting go fishing, like all those traditional things that we do in our communities. And sadly, though, a lot of our young people are not getting that opportunity. And I think it's just fast-paced technology. Everything is happening so fast. And so I have a daughter. She's 15, Bella, and it's not that I force her to go to Burwash. I just know that if I don't, it won't be instilled in who she is and where she comes from. So I'm very firm on that. Like, we're going to culture camp. We're going to this potlatch. We're gonna, like, you need to meet people. Like, I want her to have that connection. And so, you know, in the last like 2 decades of creating spaces for that cultural revitalization, and I just have so many amazing memories of, in the last, you know, 15 years working in, especially in the arts, and seeing stories come alive and seeing our language being spoken. Like, it wasn't just an overnight. It's like, you know, in the last 2 decades of seeing the pride that we have with our communities, and our young people are just taking it on and moving that forward. And so we have to continue making spaces for that to happen. And I'm seeing it happen. So kind of going back to identity, that's so important. And kind of going back to the reasons why Reconnection Vision, I'm currently the executive director, very new. But
what is that?
I know, that's where, like, what is that? Well, it's an Indigenous youth-led movement to really address those key, like, issues. And it's not about, like, environmental issues around climate change, but, like, it's disconnection. And so disconnection of language, culture, the land, identity. Like, this is why people, like, and it is because of the fast pace of the world, and things are shifting quickly. But so back in almost like 5 years ago, Jocelyn Jostrat, who's the lead, and started the project along with 13 other young Yukon First Nation leaders. And they're still very much actively involved. The fellowship that was under the leadership, they created a toolkit and, like, beautiful, like how can we get connected to ourselves? How can we get connected to others, get connected to the land? And there's very specific, like, reconnection seeds. And it's like a guidebook for anyone that wants to really look at how can we stay true to who we are as Indigenous people and worldview, but also talk about climate change from, like, a wholeness self.
Yeah.
How do we lead in a good way, so it's not about profit and, like, you know, KPIs and this and that, and, like, that's kind of lingo of business and economics, but it's like, how are you leading, you know, in a good way, so that we can make really good decisions on how we do business, how we carry ourselves in the community, and how we work with our young people, right? So go and check out our website, because like, that's a whole nother podcast to talk about what Reconnection is. I'm encouraging people to go check out our website. You can download the toolkits and really look at the seeds and look at the visions and see how you can, like, incorporate that into your daily life, or how you can include that in development strategies, or, like, it's such a powerful document.
So it's really like a series of concepts or philosophies to start to integrate into your work, into your in how you live, how you act, and I guess, is it trying to bring us back into being more connected with what we do and how we do it and where we do it, in more of a traditional holistic concept?
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so needed. I feel like the busier we get, the more complex, the the more international we become, the more digital, more technology. It just feels like we're getting further and further separated from each other, from our context, from our homes, from our communities, from our relationships. And Jani, how does that inform your work? I know this is something that you're very enthusiastic about in connecting it to the work that you do.
Yeah, so I think something that I love so much about the Reconnection Vision is that it almost comes with marching orders, right? I think in a lot of spaces, folks talk about, how do we get the youth involved? What do the youth want? What do the youth need to see? And this is a document where they've spoken. They put so much time and effort into this, and they dug down really deep and reconciled a lot of things within them as human beings, and then put this into a guide for all of us, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, right? Like we're all impacted by the structures of Western capitalism. And I think we're all experiencing this element of disconnection. And I think when I picked up this document and read it, I was like, oh my God, I feel seen for once. Like, is that what I've been experiencing? Is this why I've been feeling off? And then also, like, I guess I'm technically still a youth. I don't even really know. I started as a youth.
You are the youngest CEO.
I started in the role as a youth and still under 35. So I guess if we just keep upping that age for the cutoff for youth, and I don't know, I think I've always been an advocate for, if you give the space to the youth to say what they want, they will tell you. And to have that guiding document to now build into our structures and our decision-making processes to inform, the generations to come, what they will inherit, I think is so important, and we can't ignore that. Because if it's not for them, who's it for?
Yeah.
And as a development corporation, we could endlessly build and build and build and have this massive balance sheet and have all this money in the bank. But if we're not honoring these very genuine human intentions and desires, where folks are saying, this is what we need to be healthy, right? If you can't build a system to support that, then you have no system at all. If you have unhealthy people, what was the point of it all?
Yeah.
And so really, it's, to me, the Reconnection Vision is like this grounding tool. Because, I'm guilty of getting caught up in the numbers here and there. And like, oh, there's this amazing business deal. And the ego pops in. And it's like, oh, look at that giant dollar sign. Let's go do this like big, sexy deal. And then I can rely on this work and say, okay, well, no, like come back down to reality and be rooted in what people are saying they want and need. And is this thing that I'm chasing actually reflective of that? And so it's kind of this thing that always pulls me back to the ground. It's like, who are you doing this for? Why are you doing this? What impact are you going to have? And I think the youth kind of made it easy. They really mapped it out. Yeah. Like, I highly recommend everybody to read the Reconnection Vision. And, when we're looking at doing partnerships with companies, we give them a set of documents, just kind of like, what do we do at NNDDC? Who we are as a company, this and that. And we have this one document of how we want partners or potential partners to work in reconciliation with us, and we have a whole reading list on there as well, and so we make it mandatory reading for them to read the Reconnection Vision as well as part of their education on doing business in the Yukon. And if they're going to come play here, they got to know what they're impacting and who they're impacting.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
I just remember going to business school and seeing that when you look at shareholder-driven companies always chasing profits at the price of anything. It doesn't matter. Growth for the sake of growth, for the sake of growth. And I just remember seeing, like, you know, kind of like there's a sustainability factor that's missing here. And if everybody pursues profit for the sake of growth, we're going to become unbalanced, and the world is going to shift. And I got introduced early to a concept, a book called Natural Capitalism. And it's just looking at how do we look at the world differently? How do we look at business differently?
Yeah.
And it's talking about the sharing economy. You don't need to just buy things. You don't need to just throw things out. You can invest as a group and share things, and the longevity of things can change if we change our focuses.
Yeah.
And I see the work that the Reconnection Vision is basically taking that on, right? It's saying, and I think it's broader than that too, right? It's about how you live, who you are, what you do. But Katie, I see a common thread in all of your work, right? You know, and I'm thinking back to our voices.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Our voices.
And you've always been championing these groups, this thought of how do we do things better? How do we bring people up with us? How do we create platforms for arts and culture? How do we create platforms for youth? How do we bring the economy into a right place, utilizing the right people? Like, you know, the Our Voices was such a interesting chapter, and I know you were hugely involved with that for a long period of time, creating a platform for all these Indigenous youth, you know, trying to capture their voice, to bring their voice to the forefront. And you've always seen value in that type of work, from my perspective.
Yeah, no, it's like a lot of this work is like full circle for me. I'm like, okay, I did this before, but with different generations. So it's just like my passion, and like I said at the beginning, it's not a career. It's not like I'm trying to build this ladder to figure out like who. It's like, it's a calling. And when I see that there's a need, and like I said, I always think about like impact, legacy work, kind of going back what you're saying, like what's the ripple effect of the different initiatives and projects? Because you may not know, actually. You can jump in and be like, I know this is good, it feels good, it's aligned with my values, I'm moving forward with it, and you won't see the impacts like sometimes even like 5-10 years from now. I know when I first started the work with the 2010 Olympics and like trying to figure it all out, no one else was doing it, but it needed to happen because we needed to ensure that there was space for that growth to happen. And so super honored to have been in that space for so many years. But something was nudging me in the last year and a half of like, we need to start really investing in our young people and with our youth. And now, you know, I'm a mother, and she's 15 and she's trying to figure it out too. And I'm like, well, it's not, you know, we need to like create space for our young people to have a voice, to nurture their leadership. And I'm so honored to work with young leaders right now. Reconnection Vision is led by incredible leaders from every community in the Yukon. So how can we use this document to educate, to inspire, to grow new leaders, like moving forward in our communities? And so again, it's like planting the seeds. It's planting the seeds for the next generation.
You know, I have sisters right now that are on the language movement. Skydu, who's part of, I think, Reconnection Vision, as well as the Yukon Native Language Center. And then my other sister, Shania, is actually working at the Yukon Native Language Center right now as well. And then you look at some of the other people as part of Our Voices, like Wilfred Tucklaway, who's pioneering it. And it's just so powerful to see, I think, what the real amazing thing about Reconnection Vision is that you're getting the youth to kind of curate their own future. It's like, we're building, what does the future look like on your terms? Because at the end of the day, this is all being handed to you.
Yeah.
And, you know, just being involved in community economic development or in community governance, you know, I constantly see that it's just a bunch of old people around the table making decisions for everything. And while the wisdom of elders is so critical and crucial, you don't ever want to not have at the table your youth that are grounding you. And I think the work that you're talking about is that grounding piece, right? It's like always making sure that we're not getting too far ahead, and we're bringing our youth with us, and that yeah, I mean, it's such critical, beautiful work.
Yeah, I'm but it's again, there's no like roadmap. I think it's just creating really solid, grounding, safe space, and like leads with example too. Like I go back to there's so many incredible people in the community that are like, it's like thankless work, you know. You're doing it because you want your community to be better. You want the language to like come alive. I had an opportunity to be a part of learning Southern Shoshone. We have 2 language speakers in our community, beautiful elders, and I was so nervous, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can like take this on. Take a time off, and we're like, wait a minute, like I gotta walk the talk here. Like if I'm gonna start moving in this direction of learning and reconciliation within myself, like who am I, you know? So it's also jumping into the fire as well in terms of your own journey and your own wellness. And so I did textbook 1, and I'm leaning towards doing textbook 2. But it's happening, and it's powerful, and it's inspiring, and I'm really excited to see where this all goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also, you know, I'm not working on the language as much as I should, but I have been reconnecting with being on the land. And I think that's another aspect that sometimes gets forgotten, that, you know, we have become disconnected from our food systems, and we've been disconnected from the things that we depend on, and being able to go and hunt and harvest and butcher and prepare and cook, like right from, you know, right that full cycle, and being part of it, and being cognizant of the respect and the sacrifice that things are making for your sustenance is something that we as people forget, right? It's so easy to just go to a grocery store, and I think I would want to improve on that as well, and growing things, and how important that is. And I mean, that kind of connects back to the work that you're doing, Jani, in the community, right? You're taking the approach of being more aware of that food sovereignty, and maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that. I know the journey's kind of had its ups and downs, but I think that's important to talk about as well.
Well, actually, we like to say that we're a community corp within a dev corp. And we actually want our community corp to be kind of like a food sovereignty entity. It's something we're very, very passionate about. I mean, we're dabbling in the space in so many different ways. It started with a grocery store, then it led to buying Cold Acre and NND, bought a farm in the traditional territory, and we have this space that we've created called AIIS, which means my heart in Northern Shoshone. And it's this hub that we created in the heart of the community that has like a communal kitchen in it to break down barriers for people to start their food businesses. We've started harvesters programs, seed trading, all these like different elements that we're working into it. And it's not like we launched with this big grand plan, and it's just been like planting these seeds here and there, and people are bringing up these different ideas, or creating this safe space where, and most of our ideas have come from people that are participating in different ways, let's say as a harvester, bringing an idea forward to us and saying, hey, like if we had the space or the programming to do this, or if you could connect me with these people. And we're starting to make a lot of those linkages as like to call it like an ecosystem model of, you know, the work that we do within this space connects to all these different things. And if we can start making the connections between people and opportunities and systems, and then that just starts to support itself and keep growing. And it's like a mycelium with mushrooms and like that whole network we don't see, and it all starts to connect and it starts to amplify. And I don't know, so often we talk about like human resource issues, right? And like, why aren't people working? And, you know, we posted a job and nobody's applying. I think it was just taking time to observe and watch of where were people having the most interest. And in the environmental space, in the stewardship space, in the food sovereignty space is where people were having the most interest. And I was like, well, if we created systems and opportunities around this, like I think it's just naturally going to take off and start to flourish and support itself. And it is doing that. And then likewise, as people are participating more in those systems, I think we're also learning as an organization of different economic models and different economic principles that are not obvious within Western capital corporate structures. And that in many ways were not they weren't necessarily an element we were talking about at the DevCore level. And I don't think we would be if this reconnection work wasn't going on at the community level. And so, you know, elements of reciprocity or sharing economies or, you know, bartering systems or like all of that is like making its way into this space at AIIS. And it's like turned into this really cool, like little ecosystem we have in the community. And there's space for all these different models to exist and coexist within it. And I think that's been very interesting. And yeah, if I had a dream, it's just like that starts to expand. And that is like our ultimate community impact is we have this beautiful hub of an organization that
I love that.
Allows for the pathways for people to participate in all these different economic models and sustain themselves. And it's not just monetary. Yeah. So it's been very interesting.
Do you guys have like Cinnamon Bun Wednesday or something?
We do. Yeah.
Heard about that. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's so sweet. And people like, it's a community hub.
Yeah. And like ideas have come out of it, like thinking of like an exploration camp where you have a caterer, right? And now partnering with the harvesters. And so how is their knowledge now being incorporated into the menu design that is at an exploration camp? And how are we having people be on the land and contributing in different ways to this? And some people then going and making preserves and bringing that forward. And it's just like out of an exploration camp and just the right people and motivated people at the table to have the conversations. And it was like, yeah, all these systems and initiatives and elements can coexist with each other, and we can still like get the job done and get the project done and make space for all of this. It doesn't have to be, you know, what groceries can you buy for the lowest amount of money and just truck it in and take it straight to site. And there was this whole other element there. And I think what we see is like when we start bringing those elements in, then other people are now excited to work in those spaces because they're being seen in a different way in those spaces. And
valued.
Yeah. And celebrated. And I think it's kind of beautiful what's happening out of that space. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I love how you found what people were excited about and showing interest, and you started to build around that and try to enhance and create more of a system approach to that, which is, I think, that's the truest form of community economic development, right? It's not I don't like the models of, oh, it's being done like this elsewhere. Let's replicate that because it works there. It's going
Yeah.
to work here. I think what the approach that you're doing is a much more wholesome ground up approach where you're seeing where the interests are and you're building around that, which I think is truly valuable.
And I think something that I really appreciate about our team is that for the most part, no is not the answer we start with. How is the question we ask? So when someone brings an idea forward, it's not, no, we can't do it because it doesn't look like X, Y, Z. We recognize we have a certain fiduciary responsibility as a corporation, and so we have to make sure that it makes sense for us, but we want to find a way of how. Because if you show an interest and you show a passion and you know that it's going to be good for your community, we want to find out how to help support that. So yeah, kudos to my team for always being...
They're pretty awesome.
Yeah, they're a really, really cool team. Yeah.
And then when you're looking for investment opportunities, and I know you're starting to touch on this a little bit, but what is your priority when you're looking at the things that you do as a corporation or as a community? How do you prioritize, and then what are you dealing with too? Like you've already kind of mentioned the boom bust cycle of being so prominently singularly focused on mining. And what I'm hearing, I think, is that you've done a lot of work to kind of diversify the approach and create more of a holistic community approach to economic development, to business development, and creating an ecosystem that is much more resilient to economic ups and downs. So yeah, what is that priority, and what are some of the things that the Development Corp is focusing on?
I think first and foremost, the priority is what does a community need to not just survive, but to thrive. And I didn't come from a traditional business background. It was actually Kluane First Nation that led me to development corporations. And so my background is actually in political science and international Indigenous law. And then later my master's was in community planning and Indigenous economic planning. And I had gone to meet with folks from Kluane First Nation, specifically around the community planning efforts that they had done as a nation that led to the sustainability toolkit that was built. And I was really interested in, how does long-term community planning lead to the ability to mitigate the impacts of the boom bust cycle? So how could a community, via long-term planning, almost create like this self-determined microeconomy that exists, I don't want to say entirely independent of that macro resource economy, but it's protected enough that it can withstand the ebbs and flows that come with the extractive industry. And so I think I continuously bring that community planning element into the work that we do. And so with that, it's led us to, it's like taking a community ecosystem or community planning approach to the development that we do. So we primarily right now look at businesses that can operate within the mining space because we recognize that industry is there, right? It's not like we're going to put the blinders on and say it doesn't exist, but that they can also operate outside of mining and they also sustain something in the community. So like, let's say the whole grocery side of things, right? Whether it's retail at the grocery store, whether it's at the large camps, whether it's the logistics networks and the distribution centers, and all of it will exist with or without mining because people need to eat. Surprise, surprise. Mm-hmm. Apparently we can't survive without it. And it's something that the community has voiced, well, we want, right? We want our DevCorp to have the store, and this is key to how they function. And so it's like, okay, well, how do we build this larger economy of scale around it? And how do we leverage what's happening with the mining industry to also then help us expand into other areas. So diversification of jurisdiction is also a priority for us when we're looking at how to invest. And we've been using this model that we like to call sister investments. So recognizing that outside of the traditional territory, there's a higher likelihood that we will find opportunities that have a higher economic return than we would at the community-based level in Mayo. But we're coupling those investments together. So we don't look at things individually. So we don't say, oh, okay, well, this one thing over here is a financial loss leader, therefore we shouldn't do it. It's like, well, no, actually, it's coupled with these other opportunities, and they all support each other, like their own little family, their own little gang. And in order to make that model work, our attention has had to be on diversification of jurisdiction, first and foremost, as opposed to like the diversification of what industry we play in. I think we've pretty much stuck to the same industry lines for the most part. We've just been changing how we're doing it and where we're doing it. Recognizing, our plays in aviation, they are supported by the mining industry, but they're also supported by things like the big medevac contract and opportunity that we helped facilitate with Yukon First Nations air leasing and expanding that footprint in the aviation sector beyond just mining. So, yeah.
And what,
I love that.
what is that? Just you mentioned this Yukon Aviation.
The Yukon First Nations air leasing
Yes,
partnership.
yes.
Yeah, so that is a partnership between, I believe, 8 First Nations now. I should know the number off the top of my head, but I don't. And it started as an opportunity a few years ago with Yukon First Nations air leasing buying the medevacs from Alcan Air. So Alcan Air held the contract to provide that service to Yukon government. And so we purchased those aircraft and then leased them back to Alcan Air. And
We're part of that too, Kluane.
Yes. Yeah. And now Alcan Air is being awarded the next 10 years of the medevac contract. Also with an expanded fleet, there was the requirement for new airplanes. And we're the investors and the owners in that as Yukon First Nations air leasing. And it's just expanding that footprint into those critical services and critical industries. And the collaboration, I think, between Yukon First Nations development corporations has also really helped support that diversification out of like the traditional territory. And doing work based in reciprocity has really helped us weather that storm of the boom bust cycle that comes with the resource sector.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've been a director now for over 9 years, you said.
It's been, I'm trying to get off, but
once you're in, you're in.
I know, once I'm in, I'm in. Yeah, like we're strong board, and Kluane, we're very connected to, investing in and partnering, Yukon. And so that's been one of our requirements when we're looking for investments is what is the impact? Is it a Yukon, focused company? Like there's just so many things that we have to like discuss. But it's one of those things too where there's like that balance of, because we're an investment arm and then we have a community development, and so they focus on employment, and their head office is in Burwash. We're situated in Whitehorse. So we're constantly in conversations with the other bodies like Kluane First Nation and the Kluane Development Corp and the investment, and how do we all work together. And we don't have like a specific formula to that, but we're making some huge like impact. The corporations, all Yukon First Nation corporations, and here in the Yukon, and we're open for business. Like we're like, we see a lot of proposals on our table when it comes to investments here in the Yukon, but also investors wanting to partner with us. But kind of going back to what you were saying, you were talking about Mayo. I was just thinking and reflecting on the importance of, with, hosting art, cultural, sporting events here in the Yukon. And people just think, oh, it's just like art and culture. It's like fluff. It doesn't have any impact on the economy, which is like not true. Like, we think about a 7-day arts festival. All the hotel rooms are booked. We contract Yukon businesses. Like, it's a economic driver when it comes to supporting Yukon businesses, supporting artists. Like, it needs to be taken seriously when it comes to finding the resources and the people to carry these specific events. And I think about the Native hockey tournament that just happened. Like, you can't get a hotel,
right?
And you can't even try to get a table at a restaurant. Like, talking to businesses, they say it's the most busiest time that during the year is Native hockey tournament. And it's, Carrie Valavence, the lead with the board of directors. That's an amazing story for any community to look at a case study like that and be like, yes, this brings so much economic
what is that
impact.
economic impact?
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's huge. And so kind of going back to we need to start investing into our people. We need to start investing into our young people. And that's where the true value is. Like, how do we create opportunities for that to continue in all sorts of different sectors? Yeah.
And maybe let's look at for a second you as a business owner and what, reflecting on that experience and being an Indigenous business owner, and how do you see, what has that experience been like for you, and how do you see that kind of in the Yukon economy, and what's changed, that experience?
Well, I started Bella Elite Events and Consulting, I think it was 2011, so named after Bella, my daughter. Why am I doing this work? Oh yeah, my daughter. But I love, for me, it was just what are those projects and initiatives that I can support communities in? And I've seen the growth, especially with you and Jesse's business, Gunta, such a need for more Indigenous businesses and entrepreneurs. We need to create more space for that to happen. And I feel like it's there, but not quite. And I had the opportunity to work with Entrepreneurs for almost a year and a half. They have this amazing incubator to support Indigenous people from across the North, to help them get their business off the ground, or to get them to a place where, for them to do impact in their community. And we're just not there yet. We need more resources. We need more funding for that work to happen, because it does take a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of heart, and a lot of, I always say it's so cheesy, but it's hard work, but it's heart work, right? A lot of the businesses here have value in the communities. And so kind of going back to, we're not there yet. So I think about when I started my business to where we are now. We need to start investing more into Indigenous businesses and entrepreneurs, so that they can grow their community. And kind of similar to what you were saying with your community, with Mayo, how amazing would it be to have resources to support those small businesses? It is an incredible ecosystem that needs to be nurtured still.
And in Mayo, are you seeing a growing business sector through the activities that you've been involved in? Are you privileged to be able to work with and help develop some of these businesses? And
definitely from when I started 10 years ago to now, there are a lot more NND businesses and local businesses operating in the traditional territory. Also, a lot of people that moved back home. So that's been a very beautiful thing to see.
That's a huge key indicator of success.
Yeah.
I would say.
Quite a few folks that are diversifying their business lines, which is really interesting to see. And I'd say more and more businesses coming about that, solve a unique community conundrum, so to speak. We're firm believers in the side hustle. and recognizing that a lot of individuals in community will wear 15 hats at once and are carrying a really big load. And so I think to have an expectation that someone will dedicate their whole entire life to their one business and that they can put in all those hours is unrealistic. And so I think we've tried to take up the space to support businesses that, you know, maybe only operate part-time, but they're helping solve a community need or a community issue. And I think that's where a lot of the resources have been lacking is one, in terms of the duration of those services. So let's say you go and you get a government grant, you know, they want to see the program happen between X date and Y date. And it's like, well, maybe the individual that has that amazing idea just wasn't ready at that point in time. And so how do we keep the door open for them and the access to those resources for them so that when they are ready, they can come forward and they can access that, as opposed to they come forward and it's like, well, sorry, we have nothing for you right now because you didn't apply during that one window. And then also a lot of the resources out there, I think, are seeking to see, you know, how many full-time business owners come out of this program. And it's like, but maybe that's not what they want. And maybe that's not the fabric of the community. And that should be okay. And so I think a lot of times the metrics behind these resources are actually acting as barriers to this like community-based economic development. And I do see a large space for First Nations governments and their development corporations and other organizations like the Yukon First Nations Chamber of Commerce to take up this space of barrier-reduced or barrier-free resources so people can start their businesses. So, and it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. You know, there will be certain community actors that, you know, they provide a reduction of barriers around capital infrastructure. So like the AIIS space, right? That's a full-blown commercial kitchen. Imagine you being an individual person in Mayo saying, I'm now going to be in this line of work and I have to invest like close to $1 million in a kitchen. Like that doesn't make sense, right? And no bank's going to finance you for that at all. So we said, okay, we recognize that we play a space here. Whereas other organizations will say, okay, we're going to be the provider of programs and services or wraparound supports or whatever it is, and that the community can figure out that fabric that works and put the resources behind it. Because I think a lot of the resources right now don't work. And it's very much like this one-size-fits-all type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's hurting more businesses than it's helping.
Yeah. And I know you said it was only for a year, but with Entrepreneurship, what did you see? Like, I mean, you were, I think, more focused on that early stage business, right? With Entrepreneurship, it's those who may have a business or may have an idea or an early stage business and kind of giving them coaching and mentorship kind of and workshops and so forth. What did you see as kind of a common thread, or what is maybe missing in the support systems in the Yukon and NWT and across the north?
Kind of going back to Jani, what she just said, like startup. And so you can have a really great idea and vision for your business, but if you don't have the startup money to get it going, that's where the barrier usually comes. What's great about Entrepreneurship is like they are so focused on creating. This program is so amazing where they're able to really nurture, support the training, the it's like a wraparound service for each entrepreneur, right? And they are starting an impact fund. Mm-hmm. So they've been working really hard. They have an awesome team to like which is the next steps, mm-hmm. right? In terms of supporting Indigenous businesses to take the leap. And again, it would be a very similar situation where they're supported. They have advice. Like they're really, I think that's needed because I think about when I started my business, it's like it's like trial and error and like lessons learned. Like there was never like a playbook for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna I actually ended up just burning out because I just took on too much all the time. And so that's where I'm like, now with my business, I have to, it's my own sort of like compass of like, what is the impact, this like life and work balance that I'm very like mindful of. And we're not there yet. I think we still need to put a lot of time and energy into creating the space, similar to what Jani was saying, and we need to move in that direction of like investment, supporting our people in their businesses.
Yeah, I really liked what you said about the side hustle, because I feel that there's so much emphasis on, well, day one, you're 100% and you're achieving sales and you have payment requirements. And if you don't meet those payment requirements, you're going to be in default. So you got to be push. And as a business owner, that's not the reality. The reality is that you need to have incremental success.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part with funding. And that's the hard part with accessing, bank financing or accessing entrepreneurial startup dollars, is that it's looking at you as day one, you're 100%. And there, maybe there's they have a gradual succession, but it's not realistically grounded. And I really like what you said about the side hustle, because that's such a safer way to incrementally experiment, learning what works, what doesn't work, how do you achieve success, can you like try different things? Okay, that doesn't work, I'm going to put that away. I'm not going to lose my house over this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that model of entrepreneurship is embraced widely enough, and that it's a true mechanism, right? I'm a professional business planner. I look at the lean startup. I look at, it's not just about accessing $5 million today and then achieving the requirements of that $5 million tomorrow. There's a gradual buildup that needs to be taken. And and I don't have the answer, but I see pockets of solution, right? With Entrepreneur, with what you're saying is happening in Mayo. Going back, Katie, though, remember 10 years ago, you were part of a mentorship program that I was part of, the In Business Youth Development Network, which was kind of a multi-university trying to connect youth pre-university to Indigenous mentors in business, that it's trying to facilitate this connection that may not happen in some communities, in some households, in some families. And you were part of that. You were a mentor in that program. And so once again, I see this common thread of the work that you've been working on and the things you've been involved in. And it's so, I never actually thought of it until we were just talking today about this common thread that you've been involved in. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I love what I do. That's for sure. You gotta have passion. Like every day, I'm like, okay, what needs to happen, and it's hard work. We gotta hustle too. We gotta make sure that we're aligned with the work that we need to do. We gotta have really solid It is really relationship based. Building partnerships, crafting a vision, like getting people wanting to make that change and be a part of it. And so I'm really grateful for my path and being able to create these spaces, and really appreciate the work that you're doing too, Jani, because we need more allies. We need more people to see that vision in order for us to have Yukon flourish and to build for like always the next generation.
So I feel like we've gone all over the place, but we've captured, I think, a beautiful story and an essence of the work that you guys are both working on and the state of the economic fabric that is the Yukon, truly Yukon. Coming to a close, is there any last thoughts, Katie, to maybe things that you're looking forward to in the economic development space, in the business space, in in the work that you're doing?
Well, like I said, every day is a different day, but I think it's still kind of going back to like building the bridges, building the connections, staying up to date, and like helping community. I think that's another big piece for me, is always just being involved. I think that's really important. Being connected to community, being connected to like, so what's happening. So my word advice to anyone that like, just keep on being connected to who you are first, and like where you come from, and to always like lean on that, because I think that's carried me through my own path in life, is like who am I, how am I like aligning my values to the work that I do, and just being really, and have really true authentic like leadership, and like just, and being firm on that, knowing what you want to do and what you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So super grateful for all the people that and the circles that I've been a part of in the last 2 decades of work. And I got 20 more years. So we'll see what happens. And it's definitely, it's hard work, but like I said, it's definitely like heart work.
Yeah. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Blair.
Yanni.
I think just more and more finding space for reciprocity in business. I think it speaks to a lot of what you're bringing up around connection and relationship. And I think I have seen this shift in the past 10 years of my work, where I don't feel like reciprocity was really much of a conversation in the business space. And more it's entering the conversation. And, I think back to 10 years ago with NNDDC, it was Kluane Dana Shaw that gave us our first chance. Banks wouldn't touch us, major partners wouldn't touch us, but like Kluane Dana Shaw believed in helping NNDDC get to that next place, and we continue to work as partners and continuously bring each other into opportunities. And I feel like there's this shift happening within business where, or at least in the Yukon, where it's not so much of what's the maximum I can take from you. And it is this reciprocal relationship of recognizing, like I will have hard times and you will have hard times, and how do the systems we create support each other through those hard times. And I think I would just like to see more and more of that, and especially in the dev course space. I mean, we're not foreign to working with each other. I think I would like to see a shift of, not always requiring everybody to work together all the time. And, every organization is going to have their own agency and be able to say whether or not it's a right fit for them, and to engage in the relationships that make sense based on their own self-determined vision. But building the frameworks where you can choose, where it's not forced upon you, where it's not like, oh, well, this investment, can only exist if all 14 First Nations come on board. And it's like, well, no, everyone has a voice and can decide. And seeing more of those partnerships, but framed in a way where it's really coming from true agency and self-determination, and charting a path forward for the citizens and for the nations that the development corporations serve. And rooting it in reciprocity.
That's awesome. I mean, we're at time.
Katie's
but
saying we're done.
Wrap it up.
I do like how you're ending it, and I think this is a nice opportunity for a small plug that the Yukon First Nation Chamber of Commerce has been bringing together all the wealth entities on how do we collaborate in large scale investments together. How do we create collaboration of the willing? How do we bring people together, and it doesn't have to be on a consensus basis or a unanimous consensus basis, but it's who wants to participate in these large opportunities? How are we going to support each other so that maybe us individually can't do it, but us together can? And how do we create Yukon's next economy? How do we create the next stage of Yukon's economy as Indigenous wealth entities together, which is, I think, kind of the theme of what you guys are saying is happening at that table and with all of us as part of it. Also, the Arctic Indigenous Investment Conference coming up May 6th, 7th, and 8th, which is 100% a bigger platform. It's similar to what we're doing in the conversations we're having here, but a larger platform to talk about the great successes, the opportunities, the collaboration, the networking that's required to build those partnerships and to create that success. So something to keep your ears out. And I know you're both going to be part of that. Jani's traveling to London here, as well as Kluane Dana Shaw with Stephen Mooney and myself. And I think this episode will be released just after probably we get back. But, just on a international stage, how do we attract investors to bring them to the table so that we're Indigenous-led projects predominantly, but how do we kind of ramp up our ability to impact large-scale investment opportunities? So it's such an exciting time, and I think the work that both of you are part of is so critical, and it really speaks to the heart of why we do the work that we do. And I just want to thank you both, Gunachish, for taking the time out and taking the risk and being on this podcast and sharing your story, and hopefully it was good for you and it was a fun event, because that we want to have fun conversations here, and I know it's a bit daunting sometimes with the lights and the cameras and stuff, but I think people are very interested in what we're talking about, and I was really happy that you decided to join this and share your story. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Blair.
Okay.
Appreciate you.
And thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
Yay!